Well, joining us now on Skype from Denver in Colorado is Christopher Hill. He's a former U.S. ambassador to Iraq. Ambassador Hill, very good to have you on Al Jazeera. As you heard Rosalind Jordan say there, for now the U.S. is providing air support. The U.S. is very clear in saying that this is an Iraqi military-led operation. However, many people expect this to be a very tough battle. It's not going to be easy to retake Mosul. If things don't go according to plan, can we expect more involvement from the U.S.?
Well, I think the U.S. has done a lot to invest in this operation. First of all, there was the effort to try to hold back the Iraqis until the U.S. kind of felt they were ready. In the meantime, President Obama has invested a lot in this because he's been telling the American people for some time now that we have made tremendous progress against ISIS. So I think we've come to a kind of a culminating moment here. And I don't think people are talking about what happens if we fail. I think what they're talking about is what happens when we succeed. For example, will the Kurds be satisfied with what they have there? Will they try to move their zone of control? How will the Shia militia groups that apparently are going to be deployed over on the west side of Mosul as a kind of blocking action, how are they going to behave when people come streaming out of Mosul? How will the Sunni leadership in the country behave? Will Mosul and Nineveh become more of a Sunni stand, or will it be accepting of a Shia-led political process in Baghdad? Will the Shia do as your commentator suggested they needed to do, which is to reach out to the Sunnis? And finally, will the Sunnis really accept the reality of Shia-led rule in Baghdad? So there are a host of questions,
Right.
and that's even assuming its success in getting ISIS out of Mosul. I do believe they will succeed with that.
But it's, as you say, it's not just about defeating ISIL in Mosul, is it? What happens next is very critical. What is your view of the Iraqi government's role in this? How big of a test is this also for the current Iraqi government?
Well, it's a huge test. I mean, so many people said that Maliki was too strong. They needed to get Nouri al-Maliki out. And then as soon as they put in a new prime minister, people start turning around and saying that he's too weak or something. So, so there have been a lot of complaints about Haider al-Abadi. So this is a huge moment for him. But I think based on what I'm hearing from various people, including in the U.S. military, I think the moment has come. And I think there's an expectation of success and a hope that given all the work that has been done on the political side, that they can manage through this extremely tense and difficult time.
But there is still the question, Ambassador Hill, of whether Iraqi forces have trust and faith now in their leaders in Baghdad, because 2 years ago, of course, Mosul fell quickly after Iraqi forces abandoned the city because there were concerns about the government in Baghdad and the sectarian issue, as you alluded to. Has that changed in the last 2 years?
Well, I mean, from what I can understand, the Iraqi forces have been are much better motivated and better trained. There's nothing like being defeated in battle to concentrate the mind. So I think they are a different force. I think Haider al-Abadi is a different leader who has done a lot to try to reach out to the Sunnis. But I think there's a lot of work to be done in Iraq, and I don't think Iraq has had the kind of success of putting different sectarian groups together in a governance, in a democratic governance. So a lot of problems. But I think it's pretty clear that ISIS's days in Iraq are numbered. The fact that they're resorting to these bombings in Shia neighborhoods or in Shia festivities kind of says what they are, which is they cannot go up against military formations. They go up against innocent civilians. So I think their days are numbered there. And the question, of course, is if they lose Mosul, which is a huge prize, I mean, far bigger than the so-called capital in Raqqa in Syria, I think this could be the beginning of the end for ISIS. It doesn't mean the conflict in Syria is over. That has a whole other dynamic, whole other groups. But with respect to ISIS, I do believe we're making progress.
If they do win, and we're not there yet because this is expected to be a very long battle, if they do win, as you say, it could perhaps mark a shift in Syria, but Syria is much more complicated, of course.
Yes.
how do you see what's happening in Iraq affecting the situation in Syria, not just vis-a-vis ISIS, but also with the government, Syrian government forces and Russia's involvement there?
Well, I mean, the situation in Iraq has been pretty much focused on retaking their territory from this hideous group ISIS. So I think that's moving ahead. But I think the problem in Iraq remains the great difficulty of governance. You have a Sunni community, Sunni Arab community that has never really accepted the reality of this Shia-led governance, and at the same time, you have Shia who have not adequately, in any way, shape, or form, reached out to the Sunnis. So I think Iraq will be consumed by its own difficulties there. And I haven't even mentioned the issue of managing the Kurds, because the Kurds in Iraq have been directly involved with Kurds elsewhere, especially in Syria. Obviously, if there's some political arrangement for Syria, laying out what a future of Syria could be, if there's some agreement among international powers on that, if there's therefore an agreement on some sort of ceasefire, then perhaps there could be some progress there. But so far, I think Syria continues to be an enormous problem in the world, whereas I think Iraq's problems will look manageable in comparison.
Ambassador Hill, very good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us there from Denver in Colorado.